Welcome back, everyone. I'm here to review one of my most anticipated games, Hogwarts Legacy. I'm just going to be completely honest here, and I'm going to say I was so psyched for this game's release. Every time I saw a new trailer, the hype just kept building up, basically to the point where I was just a little worried that, it might get blown out of proportion. A lot of games don't live up to that hype. Just to let you guys know, my initial impressions video that I did 10 hours in, I was just a lot better than I expected with the game. As I said before, I'm really used to games not living up to this hype, so I was pretty cautious going in. After fully beating the game though, is this one worth buying, or should this be something you get on sale? If you're not a fan, or if you're not familiar with the Harry Potter books, is this game even worth considering, or is just social media blowing this one out of proportion? Quick disclaimer, you're not going to see any character names or any of the endgame things because I wanted to keep spoilers at a minimum for anyone that's interested. We're also a brand new and growing channel. If you like completely unbiased game reviews, hit the subscribe, don't miss another video. I drop reviews on basically all the major games after I finish them, which is why this one's a little late. The game is just huge. My goal this year is to not only expand on content for everyone, but I want to bring some first impressions videos, some reviews, and just some more tips for new games. I'm going to start with graphics up front. The game is only available on next-gen consoles. PS4 and Xbox One, you gotta just wait a little bit. Same for Switch, which gladly with the next gen, you can go into any store right now and pick it up, right? PS5's at retail. It's crazy times that we're living in. I got this one regrettably on Series X, and I'll talk about my regrets later. You do get a few options of starting the game. You get the performance, you get fidelity, and you get some fidelity ray tracing. I tried playing most of that game on fidelity ray tracing, because the world is just gorgeous. I couldn't keep going with it though. The stop motion that you get in the castle is just not worth it. I ditched that and I went ahead with performance, and that's the mode that I suggest for most players. Despite being on performance mode though, the game is just so nice graphically. The textures, the shading, the character models, there's just so much detail to the game. The world here is beautiful, and you just spend so much time in it that you start to appreciate all the little details that they've added to the world, whether you're familiar with the books or not. Surely there's some pop-in, there's some graphical issues. It's nothing game-breaking. The worst I found graphics-wise was just like this flickering black lines that I saw on the character's face while they were talking. But other than that, I had no issues with graphics at all, and I just feel like it did its job. It captured me, and it kept me immersed in the world that the devs created. Sound here is something else that's really good. Everyone has a voice in the game. You even get little jingles that remind you of the film. You get the whole music that picks up during battle. I didn't have an issue with sound except for just some lines that your character and others repeat all the time.
Revelio.
You constantly hear, "Off on another adventure, are we?" when you pass the damn fast travel statue. Or, "It all seems to lead to Hogsmeade," just constantly. It's just, you explore just so much in the game to where it gets so annoying hearing the same line constantly, especially just Revelio, Revelio, every few inches. I talked a little bit about performance earlier, and I do want to get that section out of the way. You're going to run into some glitches while you play this game. I couldn't turn in a side mission until I restarted the game. I also couldn't land my broom until I restarted my game. The worst thing that happened to me though, and I thought everything broke and I had to start all over, was that I fell through the map and it autosaved. And I didn't get a recording of this because I moved my setup to my OLED on my living room because I really wanted to enjoy the game. But again, I fell through the map, and that autosave had me just keep starting back there with this white screen of hell that I couldn't get out of. Thankfully though, the game is constantly saving, so I just reloaded in just a few minutes back and I was able to fix that. Like I said, you're going to get some bugs. Thankfully nothing game breaking. Something almost was game breaking for me, but the constant saves really help. I did hear that PC is really just not optimized at all. I've got a friend that has it, and he says the castle is literally just stop motion, and his PC is not that bad. So I'm hearing some people have bought PS5s literally just to avoid this, so take that with a grain of salt. If you want to buy this on PC, just try at your own risk. I don't think it's too massive an issue, but it is something I want to mention. As for story though, it's arguably the weakest part of the game. The game does its best to just kick that story off right away. You get some action, it introduces you to the combat. I don't want to spoil much here, but this happens 200 years before Harry Potter. So you don't need any book knowledge. If you're a newbie, you're not going to feel lost. You're basically a new student going to Hogwarts, but you're coming in as an older 5th year. You find out immediately that you can see this magic that others can't. This connects to some older wizards in the past and a goblin rebellion. Goblins and the dark wizards are basically teamed up, and you're the person that needs to stop them. It's really not that much deeper than that. I mean, you're basically just shutting down a goblin uprising. The goblins want to use this ancient magic for them to rise against wizards, and you murder thousands of humans and goblins to stop them. The story finds itself being kind of really basic and just not that engaging. I found myself a lot more engaged in like the side missions that came out with the classmates rather than the main story itself, which there's a ton of side missions to do, by the way. But just with how big the world gets, it does get a little overwhelming. Being a guy that likes to rock a sword instead of magic in games, I was a little worried if I'd like combat or not. After beating the game fully, all I'm going to say is that when it works, it's freaking awesome, and when it doesn't work, it's fucking frustrating. The combat has you looking at an enemy and casting spells. You basically have special spells like Accio that bring people to you, Leviosa that'll lift them in the air. You'll chain some basic attacks into the enemies, lift them into the air, light them on fire, freeze them, drop them to the ground hard. It's really fun when it works and you're not being overwhelmed, especially when you chain the attacks. I mean, you're launching projectiles and you're using these really awesome magic finishers. You have a counter called a Protego. It's something that you have to time and basically counter the enemies. And I'll admit, I screwed that one up a lot. I got hit a lot. You do get an Elden Ring dodge, which really helps, by the way. Especially when you upgrade it later, you can get this teleport effect. My only issue with that teleport effect was that the trolls are kind of glitched and they'll lunge across the map to hit you. Not sure if that's something that they're doing on purpose or not, but something I wanted to point out. My issue though with combat is just how overwhelming the game gets. You get so many spells, and holding right trigger and then D-padding down or right to switch to the other 4 spells feels like a death sentence. Sometimes it wouldn't register, you'd open up the spell list, you'd get hit while trying to do it. To make matters worse, enemies are going to just bunch up and you're going to hit the wrong one with the spell. The thing is, the depth here with combat is that some enemies are going to have these colored shields, and you're basically using a spell that's the same color to break that shield. So when they bunch up like that, you're hitting the wrong person. I found myself wasting spells hitting a red shielded guy with a blue because of the camera, or maybe just a yellow with a red. It led to some annoying deaths or waste of potions. In combat, you can also use plants, which are basically grenades. You've got these plants that'll stun everybody, cabbage that'll chomp on people. I'll admit I didn't use them as much, and I really kind of forgot that they were there. Use potions too to basically buff your character or their magic, which is also another thing that I didn't really touch. The only potion I really used was just like the health potion. You can make all of these in your base, which is your room of requirement that you unlock as you play the story, which is really just another game within itself. So if you thought Hogwarts Castle and the whole open world had enough for you to do, the room of requirement introduces a farm/Pokemon simulator, upgrading armor, decrypting mystery gear, planting plants for combat. I mean, you can decorate the room and really make it your own, so that's pretty cool. It's an awesome feature. It's just something that I honestly rarely use besides for just upgrading my gear near the end of the game. I didn't really use it a lot because there's just so much to do in this game. You seriously can't walk 5 feet towards a quest without hitting Revelio, hearing a ding, finding a hidden page, unlocking a door, finding a moth, going to a picture, talking to someone, getting put on a side mission automatically. The game really starts to suffer from a little bit of that open world syndrome, but it's nothing like a Ubisoft Assassin's Creed game, which is just ridiculous and too much. What I really want to talk about though is the world, and I think it's the best part of the game. The open world is huge. There's just so much to do. There isn't just like tedious things to do in the world constantly. I mean, a lot of the stuff is actually pretty fun. You get a lot of side missions, couple being boring. Seriously, I mean, you're gonna have to fetch some girl's marbles or her diary in the beginning. It sucks. It's typical copy paste, side missions. But with some side missions, they're great. I don't want to spoil a lot. There's a few that I definitely think you shouldn't skip. There's the animal side missions that you need to definitely do. And there are the Sebastian missions. Those lead to the curses, which I definitely think you shouldn't skip. Within Hogwarts Castle and Hogsmeade, you've got a lot of secrets there that basically tie to these things called challenges. You get book pages that basically have you casting this Revelio spell everywhere because it leads to easy XP, it levels you up, gives you experience points, and you're getting really cool cosmetics. There's challenges when you're fighting people that you have to do mid-fight. There's hidden rooms. There's math door puzzle things that I couldn't figure out in the beginning, but then finally got. You have these moths that you have to guide to pictures. You have side missions from just like villagers or just students. There's puzzle trials that you find your way into. And I mean, there's even just full on survival combat. There's the whole basic poacher bandit base too that you have in every open world. But the cool thing here is that everything counts towards something and it all just rarely feels like a waste of time. But I will admit, end of the game, I just started to beeline the main missions because it just kind of started to get overwhelming. The excitement and the progression starts to kind of taper off as you reach that level cap of level 40, and it really just kind of starts to get old. It really just comes down to some of the flaws in the game that I can't ignore during this review. The flaws for me with Hogwarts Legacy, besides, the beef I had with some of the combat, was the realism of the open world. I mean, don't get me wrong, the world's beautiful. Hogwarts is literally straight out of the book. There's videos online comparing descriptions in the book through an audiobook to where people are walking around. It's awesome. There's so many secrets, there's so much to do. Most of it is not a waste of time, but my mid-game, I started to really wonder why there isn't a morality system. I think the game does an amazing job of putting you in the world. It makes you really feel like a student. You're going to class, you're helping others. You're even that special savior of the world during your off time. But what doesn't make sense to me is the lack of any real world consequences to what you do. You literally can land a hippogriff at Hogwarts, place it in your bag, and students don't bat an eye or make any sort of comment. You murder thousands of goblins and wizards on your downtime with the help of some other students and even your professor during some missions. Your professor even witnesses you cast curses like Crucio, which are basically one of the worst, darkest spells, and they literally will not bat an eye or make a comment. Yes, you don't have to learn the spell, you can choose not to, but there's just no need to just skip out on it. It's really overpowered. Why not use it? In the castle, you're forced to stealth some missions because students aren't allowed out of the common room at night. But outside of that, you could basically break into any room without anyone stopping you, even if it's at night. I feel like the game works so well. The open world is just so absorbing, but you start losing that realism and consequence, especially because the choices that they give you make no difference in the game either. There is a choice at the end of the game that basically alters it a little bit, but again, it's no consequences. You help a student find her diary and you make her pay for it. She just gets a little mad and butthurt, but that's basically it. She pays you.
Unless you want your classmates to know how you really feel about them, you might reward me for my time.
Oh, you're not at all who I thought you to be.
And you're not who I thought you to be. Based upon your diary, you seem terribly judgmental.
Fine. I shall pay you. But you cannot begin to imagine what I shall be writing about you next.
Even on a good playthrough, give her the diary, she'll still pay you. It really makes you feel like you have a choice, but it really just doesn't matter because you're the hero of the story and you're what the game wants you to be. I really think a simple morality system like a light or dark side meter would just do so much for the game. And if it actually made a difference in how people interacted with you. Don't get me started on the lack of DLC or co-op because it just looks like the devs just don't want to do it. I really wish we could even just have other wizards, worst case, just along with us as companions, like how Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the books were a team. To sum things up for the review here, Hogwarts Legacy is almost everything I wished for. Rarely does a game have this much hype and just exceed my expectations. During a time where we're constantly hit with these open world games that are just giant sandboxes with bandit camps and collectibles, I think this game really shines with individuality. I feel like there's enough depth here that when it comes to the world, it really just makes up for that lack of a really, engrossing story. The story missions aren't bad, they're not fun, but the story itself, the writing is just a little weak. There's a ton of side missions that you shouldn't miss because those stories alone just add so much more, I think, to the game. Being just transported to this world, having it filled with secrets, rooms, and constant progression is what made this game seriously addicting. The combat really worked, and besides just some issues with targeting, I could just see this getting better if they go ahead and make a sequel. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I think 2023 is just off to an awesome start. My final score for Hogwarts Legacy is a 9 out of 10. This one for me is definitely a game that no one should miss, especially if they aren't familiar with the Harry Potter series. The game itself is just a good game overall. You get more than 40 hours of playtime for the price of just $70 with a constant stream of things to do, secrets to discover, and missions to complete. The game really would benefit from just a little more realism and a morality system, but I'm really hoping that's on the radar for developers if they ever decide to make a sequel. Either way, this one's definitely a buy, and I'm glad I finally got to experience it. If you're considering buying this game, I really think this is something that you should just go out on a limb on and just try it out. So that's my review for Hogwarts Legacy. If you made it this far, don't forget to drop a like, help us out against the YouTube algorithm. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe. I'll be dropping a lot more reviews coming up. Thanks again for all the support. I appreciate you guys. See you next time.